Hey guys, Aaron Dorr here with Wyoming gun owners. The fight to fix the Second Amendment Preservation Act here in Wyoming is an ongoing battle, and we have some big updates for WYGO members today. First, we have some excellent news. The hearing over our bill, Senate File 196, is going to take place on Tuesday morning. I believe it's at 8 o'clock in the morning in the Senate Ag Committee. This is going to be a great time for us to highlight the problems with our current SAPA law and give the solution that we have in this bill with Senator Tim Salazar. That's the great news. There's other news, though, as well, and that is that the House has just filed a brand new bill that purports to deal with the problems in SAPA as well. It's House Bill 303. This video is a direct message to Representatives Ken Pendergraft, Bill Almand, Darren McCann, and Clarence Stivar. And I want to be very clear on this. This comes from the utmost spirit of good faith. These guys did great stuff for gun owners last year with SF 109, with HB 125, calling for a special session after Governor Gordon vetoed the bill. And I believe this bill is their effort to fix the problems that they did not create in 2022 with SAPA. There are other names on this bill in the Senate, and those names are not innocent, but that's not the purpose of this video. HB 303 contrasts with our bill, SF 196, and our House bill, HB 283, in a way that needs to be explained. Now, I'm going to tell you guys right now, if you liked our last video where we mercilessly ridiculed a lobbyist who was lying about all of the best pro-gun names that we have here in Cheyenne right now, that video was a lot of fun. It was a little bit of character. We had a good time. This video is going to be different. It's going to be a policy debate between HB 283 and HB 303. If you're not into policy, you might find it kind of boring, but I hope you watch it anyway, because this shows how important it is to get language right the first time. And now what we're trying to do now is fix a problem that we all knew was created in 2022. So I specifically hope that Ken Pendergraft, Bill Almand, Darren McCann, and Clarence Stivar have the moments it takes to watch this video, because, guys, you're on the right track, but you have to do a few more things. And we're going to both identify problems and then give you the solution at the exact same time. First, we're going to begin with the good stuff. HB 303 finally modifies the code section that was created in 2022, 9-14-203, and it defines what a peace officer is. Let me back up for a minute. The Second Amendment Preservation Act simply said that Wyoming is a sovereign state. After it said that Wyoming cops would only enforce Wyoming law when it comes to firearms, ammunition, and accessories. That's how we're going to keep Wyoming red and keep Wyoming free when Joe Biden was in the White House. The last thing we want is for Wyoming cops to be forced or be allowed to enforce federal gun control laws here in Wyoming. So SAPA was designed to prevent that. And to make sure that our blue counties didn't violate SAPA law, we had to have penalties into the law. Now, of course, our SAPA was hijacked in both chambers, and the fake version of SAPA is what passed. And one of the problems was it applied penalties against public officers. The problem with public officers here in Wyoming is that the way it's defined in the code, these are offices whose authority originates primarily with the state constitution. So Governor Gordon is a public officer. State reps are public officers. State senators are public officers. The penalties in fake SAPA in 2022 went against public officers. This bill wisely includes peace officers in the penalty section. That is defined elsewhere in 7-2-101, subsection A, subsection 4. Guys, putting this in there was a great step, and we applaud you for doing that. That's one of the great parts of HB 303. But now we have some issues, and I'm going to help explain this with a variety of screenshots. I'm going to show you a picture of the problem and a picture of the solution so that we're all on the exact same page. The first problem comes in the definition of the word unconstitutional in current law 9-14-203A. Again, this was a problem that was created in 2022 with fake SAPA. I'm going to remove some items here from my screen, and then I'm going to play or show you guys some of these screenshots to help you see what I'm talking about. Here comes the first screenshot. This is current law in Wyoming today. This was created with fake SAPA in 2022, 9-14-203. It talks about prohibiting Wyoming, and then it says in the underlined section to enforce, administer, or cooperate with any, and here's the key part, with any unconstitutional acts, laws, treaties, orders that infringe on our gun rights. And that sounds pretty good, right? We don't want Wyoming cops to enforce unconstitutional laws when it comes to our gun rights. The problem is nowhere in there does fake SAPA from 2022, nowhere in that code section do we actually define what the heck an unconstitutional act is. And so obviously, if you are a Blue County department head over in the Tetons, or maybe Cheyenne PD police chief, and you say to yourself, well, you know, Governor, let's pick a name, Gretchen Whitmer. I mean, God help us, right? President Gretchen Whitmer, heaven help us. She signed an executive order that bans 30-round magazines because the president has executive action authority, then it must be constitutional. Therefore, I can violate this code section because it's not unconstitutional. If you don't define what is or is not constitutional, it is wide open for abuse. And this mistake was not an accident in 2022. It was done on purpose, but now is our time to fix it. So we would propose the following solution, which is contained in our bill, HB-283. Here is our language. It's in the box in red there. It talks about precluding law enforcement from attempt to enforce, provide material aid, support, participate in any way the enforcement or implementation of any act, law, treaty, order, rule, or regulation of the United States government solely regarding firearms, ammunition, or accessories against law-abiding citizens. You see, ours is very clear. We define it by saying we want Wyoming cops to enforce Wyoming law when it comes to firearms, ammunition, and accessories. That's what our fix would do. If we leave the current language in there that just says unconstitutional, this will not fix the problem. And I think most of us would agree on that if we read this in an objective light. That needs to be fixed. The next problem we have in here deals with federal task forces. So SAPA in 2022, the version that we had, said that Wyoming cops could not enforce federal gun laws. What they did with the fake SAPA bill is they said Wyoming cops cannot enforce federal gun laws if Wyoming money pays the bill. It was a very intentional, nasty little sneak attack, and that is the current law today. Here's a screenshot so you know what I'm talking about. This is current code 9-14-203. The state and all subdivisions of the state are prohibited from using any personnel or funds appropriated by the legislature of the state of Wyoming or any other source of funds that originates within the state of Wyoming to enforce federal gun control laws. That's effectively what it says. Do you see what they did? They said it only applies if state money is paying the bill. The problem is that's not how it works, and everyone knows that. Federal gun control laws are primarily enforced through federal task forces, and how those work is you'll have some ATF or some marshals or some FBI come up from Denver, and they'll create a local task force. They'll grab a couple troopers, they'll grab a couple city cops, a couple sheriff's deputies, and pretty soon they'll have 10, 15, 20 people, and they're going to have a task force that Uncle Sam pays for. And when they do that, then they are immune from this language because the money then is not appropriated by the legislature. That's why this is a gaping problem that needs to be addressed. Our solution is contained in HB 283. Here's a screenshot. says right here, funds that originate within the state of Wyoming or any federal funds or any other source of funds to attempt to enforce, provide material aid, support, or any way participate in the enforcement of federal gun control laws. You can see right there in the middle of that red box, ours clearly states you cannot use money from within Wyoming or federal funds or other funds. That's the only way to make this clear, that you cannot have a federal task force comprised of Wyoming cops enforcing federal gun control. This is a disaster if we do not deal with this, because everybody knows that's how the feds enforce their laws, is through a task force. That is nasty stuff. There's a separate problem, though, as well. One last problem we have to talk about, and that is contained in current code section 9-14-203. And that's where it says that nothing in this act shall be construed to prohibit Wyoming government entities from accepting federal funds for law enforcement purposes. Let me show you a screenshot so we're all reading from the same sheet of music. Let me remove that banner across the bottom. There, you can see it right there. This is current code 9-14-203, subsection B. Nothing in this act shall be construed to prohibit Wyoming government entities from accepting federal funds for law enforcement purposes. Now, again, on the one hand, that might sound like that's pretty good stuff, right? The problem with that is that that's exactly what we're trying to avoid. We don't want our cops to enforce federal law enforcement objectives. By leaving it open-ended like that, it implies and it clearly states that we can let our cops be used to enforce federal law. Here is our solution. This is 9-14-203. This is contained in our bill, HB-283. It says, the last sentence in that paragraph, nothing in this act shall be construed to prohibit Wyoming government entities from accepting federal assistance or funds for the enforcement of the laws in this state. I'm sure you see the difference. The current law allows them to have federal funds for any law enforcement purposes. That means they can enforce federal gun laws. That's a problem. Our language clearly says we can take federal money to enforce the laws of our state. That's the whole point of SAPA in the first place. Last issue with this bill. This is kind of a good news, bad news situation, and there's some great news in here. What you guys have done with this bill is create civil penalties in the law, and we applaud you for doing that. Everyone knows that WIGO was shouting from the mountaintops in 2022 that by removing the civil penalties, which is what fake SAPA did, they effectively took out the teeth. And the reason for that is very simple. If you have to rely on criminal penalties to enforce this, that means your local county prosecutor has to bring charges against the sheriff or the police chief or the state patrol commandant, and that's simply not going to happen. And so while there are criminal penalties in the law, like Donald Trump says, sounds great, doesn't work. Civil penalties, on the other hand, allow individual gun owners, you and I, to take these agencies into court if they violate the law. And so what you guys have done with this, and we applaud you for this, is putting in here civil penalties. Here is a screenshot of your legislation, HB-303. The court, upon a finding of a violation, in addition to any damages ordered under the Wyoming Governmental Claims Act, may, here's the key word, may impose a civil penalty against the governmental entity. The problem here, I think it's pretty apparent to most people, is the word may. If we are trusting, if we are counting on, if we are relying on liberal judges here in Wyoming to issue these fines, we all know that will never happen. And if law enforcement agency department heads who are trying to find ways to skirt this law, if they realize that, then this law, again, has no teeth. Instead, we propose the language that we have in our bill, HB-283, SF 196. That is right here. It's in the section that is outlined in red. The court, upon finding a violation of this act, shall impose a civil penalty against the agency, subdivision, or law enforcement agency in an amount of $50,000 per violation. The key word, the key difference there, obviously is the word may versus shall. That has to be buttoned up. So we have one really good thing in this bill, HB-303. We have one attempt at doing the right thing here as well. And we have three glaring issues that this bill does not address. And so, again, our message here to House leadership, and especially to the guys who filed this bill, again, Ken Pendergraft, Bill Allamand, Clarence Stiver, and Darren McCann, is that you've got a good thing going here. It's heading down the right direction, but we have really big gaps that have to be closed to fix SAPA. I would suggest you guys run an amendment, and you can grab HB-283 and do a complete amendment, a committee substitute. That's totally fine. However you want to do it. But let's finally get this done right, because WIGO appropriately sounded the alarm on this in 2022. Everybody here in Cheyenne now knows that the fake SAPA bill we passed in 2022 was impotent and had no teeth. We can't keep doing this, every couple years forever. We have a window of time right here. We have a friendly White House, a friendly Department of Justice. We're likely never going to get sued over this. Now is the time to button this up and get this done correctly, so that whenever we have another horrific Democrat in the White House, these protections will be in place for the long haul. Guys, don't forget, Tuesday morning, I think it's 8 a.m., we're going to have a hearing on our version of SAPA, SF-196, in the Senate Ag Committee. Please, if you live anywhere around Cheyenne, come on out and be a part of the hearing and make your voice heard. In the meantime, do one thing for me, folks. Take this video and make sure your state rep and your state senator sees this video. They're very busy. That's why we took the time to make a video with screenshots to do all the work for them, to do a quick comparison. Now it's your job to make sure your rep sees this, so everyone knows that HB-303, while it's a partial solution, still has some significant gaps that need to be buttoned up. All we have time for today, guys. Take action right away. Make your voice heard. Much more to come in the days ahead. Hey, guys, WIGO is fighting hard to expand Second Amendment freedom to make sure our children's children have a right to keep and bear arms. Get involved in this fight today. Number 1, sign up for text alerts from us. Number 2, follow us on X. And number 3, like and subscribe for more content.